Welcome back to a nice cup of history in 2022. Our last episode was also the first one of the year, the History Awards. Yay! But then we've had to take an impromptu break. Unfortunately, after Em caught COVID over New Year, I then caught it at the end of January. We're both fine, there don't seem to be any long-term effects, but thanks to that and other things, we've had to have a short break. Oh, and we're in a musical, so it's all go.
Yeah, it's been a bit busy.
Just a bit. But we are back with a bang and recording 2 episodes back to back to release over the next couple of weeks for you before we hopefully get back into the swing of things. So, shall we get started?
This week on A Nice Cup of History, we're diving into that. It's going great already. We're diving into the tumultuous history of one of England's most famous buildings, Hampton Court Palace. We look at the construction and how many times it has changed hands over the centuries, along with some of the visitors that might not have been able to leave.
And in this week's Ridiculous Death, we look at why too much of a good thing might not be safe.
So,
let's don our finest gowns, get ready for dinner with the king, and
let's get historical.
Whilst known as a royal palace, Hampton Court was not originally designed for royal occupancy. It was instead originally meant to be lived in by one Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. Located now in the London borough of Richmond upon Thames, which is about 12 miles or 19.3 kilometres from central London, construction started on this lavish palace in 1514.
The land was originally owned by the Order of St John of Jerusalem, also known as the Knights
Hospitalier.
Why would you put that in and not tell me I have to say shit like that?
French words.
Okay, fab, thank you. Wolsey spent Carrie!
Have a sip of your tea and start again. In fairness, you are tired. We were out very, very late last night, so...
Yeah, it's my cousin's 30th birthday, so I'm a bit shattered. But it's cool, I can do this.
You got this.
Wolsey spent the princely sum of 200,000 crowns. 1 crown was worth about 5 shillings, and a pound was worth 20 shillings. So back then, it mounted to about £50,000. Factoring in inflation, this would be modern day equivalent of £33,138,345, approximately. It was not a cheap build.
No, he was going all out for the cost of this. Mm-hmm. He wanted it to be a very princely palace. A lot of his original building work is still present. He created the base court, or the first courtyard, and this contained an impressive 44 lodgings for his guests. He had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
I couldn't fill it with 44 people.
Well, I guess that's 44. Each lodging probably housed 2 people.
Yeah. The second court, known today as the Clock Court, was where Wolsey had his best rooms, known as the State Apartments.
Makes sense.
These were his rooms and later became the Royal Apartments. You can still see Wolsey's seal over the entrance arch to the clock tower.
That's cool. I don't know why I've never been to Hampton Court Palace.
Me neither, to be honest with you. Me neither.
Yeah, it is a beautiful combination of perpendicular Gothic and Renaissance classical architectural type styles. We're not even close to being architects. I can barely say the word architect, but we can appreciate the beauty of the building. So we won't go into too much detail about the construction and the styles implemented at Hampton Court Palace, but we would recommend further reading for those of an architectural bent.
Yeah, if you go onto the website, because it's run by Historical Royal Palaces, or HRP, if you go onto their website, they have a breakdown of a lot more information about the construction of it and the different eras and the different styles. Despite all of the effort and expense that was invested in Hampton Court's creation, Wolsey himself wasn't actually able to enjoy his newfound opulence for very long.
In 1528, things weren't going well for old Wolsey. Henry VIII had started to tire of his marriage of Catherine of Aragon, which had only produced a single surviving child in the form of a daughter, causing a potential succession crisis. Henry had started to look elsewhere, and his eyes had landed on the one and only Anne Boleyn, a member of the powerful Howard family. Henry wanted an annulment of his marriage with Catherine, on the grounds that she had already consummated her marriage to his older brother Arthur prior to his death, which she still disputed until her own death.
Yeah.
Wolsey, being his liaison with Rome, was meant to assist with the king's great matter, but,
The Pope?
Yep.
Il Papa? He say no. He say no. So Wolsey was falling out of favour, which he had honestly thought would never happen to him. He rose really, really high from being the son of a butcher to a prince of the church to wielding as much power in theory as the king. Didn't expect it to all fall. But it did.
Yeah.
In an attempt to try and improve his standing with Henry once more, Wolsey gifted him Hampton Court Palace. Things did continue to go downhill, unfortunately, and whilst in captivity after finally falling into full disgrace, Wolsey died in 1530.
Henry wasted no time, as always, and within the year he started to add his own touches to the palace, expanding it further to comfortably house his over 1,000 strong court. By 1535, a great hall had been added, and it holds the distinction of being the last medieval-style great hall created for the English monarchy. Henry was so desperate for this room to be completed that he made the masons work through the night, working by candlelight. His urging worked, however, and it only took 5 years to complete.
It might sound like a while, but bear in mind everything down to the bricks were made by hand. The workers would have to have been incredibly skilled, as it would only obviously be the best for the king.
It wasn't just a testament to architecture, though. It was also one to learning and opulence. In 1540, the astronomical clock was installed, and it still runs today. It shows the time of day, phases of the moon, the month, the year, quarter, the date, the sun and the star sign of the time, and when it was high water at London Bridge, which helped anybody visiting via the nearby Thames.
So it's pretty impractical.
Yeah, and still there.
Yep, still there, still working. And I think it's called a Copernicus clock, or an example of a Copernicus clock, which is pretty cool. The gatehouse which holds the clock is known as Anne Boleyn's Gate, though she never actually got to see her apartments above the gatehouse completed, being beheaded whilst they were still under construction. It's a bit unfortunate. It's like, nice rooms, you ain't going to see them now.
Yeah, right. In 1537, Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour, gave birth to the future Edward VI, sadly dying just 2 weeks later, all at Hampton Court. Henry's bad luck with wives in that palace did not stop there.
No. While at Mass in the chapel at Hampton Court in 1541, Henry received word that his fifth wife, Catherine Howard, incidentally a cousin of Anne Boleyn, had committed adultery, which was a treasonous crime against the king. She was confined to her apartments for a few days before being transported to Sion House and then the Tower of London for execution. Whilst in her rooms, legend has it that she escaped and ran in a desperate dash to Henry's apartment to try and get to him, whilst he was in the chapel, to try and plead for her life, but the guards recaptured her and returned her. The long room she fled through is now known as the Haunted Gallery, so called because the sound of a woman screaming desperately for help could be the cries of poor Catherine trying one last time to plead for mercy from a king who wasn't really known for that.
Maybe.
In
1547, Henry died.
Oh.
Need to have a moment for my bae.
I condole you.
Thank you. His son, Edward, succeeded to the throne, but that didn't really last very long. Then the two daughters that Henry spent so damn long trying to push aside for his son ruled, one being known as the most ruthless queen in English history, and the other leading us through our only golden age. They both spent their fair share of time at Hampton Court.
Mary I spent her honeymoon with King Philip II of Spain. There, and chose the palace as a site for the birth of her first child. Sadly, though, Mary never had children, instead having phantom pregnancies, possibly as a result of ovarian or similar cancers.
Elizabeth was responsible for the construction of the Eastern Kitchen, which is now the public tea rooms. That's cool, didn't know that.
If you ever come to England and you go to a historic house, it's not complete without a tea room.
Oh no, obviously not.
No.
But England.
Exactly.
In 1603, Elizabeth I died, and she was succeeded by her cousin, James I, or the Sixth of Scotland, which ushered in the Stuart era, so called because that was the name of his royal house, descended from the Royal Stuart clan of Scotland.
His son, Charles I, had Hampton Court as both his home and later his prison, from which he briefly escaped into the Privy Garden before being recaptured. In happier times, he spent his honeymoon there following his marriage to the then 15-year-old Henrietta Maria back in 1625. It then passed out of royal hands when Charles I was executed in 1649.
Luckily, during the Commonwealth era under Oliver Cromwell, Hampton Court remained mostly untouched. A lot of the contents were auctioned off as symbols of the crown, but the building itself was left mostly untouched, which is more than we can say for others. Cromwell appreciated the art and architecture and enjoyed living at the palace, by all accounts, living like a king, even though he had just killed one because he didn't like the monarchy. But this isn't the platform for us to express our distaste in Oliver Cromwell. We do that well enough in one of our earliest episodes, A King by Any Other Name.
Yep, and I think the title of that was just a slam to him anyway.
Yeah.
When Charles II was restored to the throne in 1660, yay, hooray, he visited Hampton Court with his brother and later successor James II, but he didn't stay there long. With the construction of luscious European palaces such as Versailles, Hampton Court soon started to seem outdated and something needed to be done.
So, within months of coming to the throne, after usurping James II, his daughter Mary II and her husband William III, co-rulers, if you believe it, the only time it's happened, decided that the palace needed a revamp.
Sir Christopher Wren, he who created St Paul's Cathedral as we know it now, following the Great Fire of London, was called upon and worked alongside a chap called William Tolman to get the work done.
A lot of the Tudor palace was lost, with the exception of the Great Hall. This included the staterooms that saw Henry VIII through his happiest and most trying times. The plan was to emulate Versailles, which was seen as the standard for palaces during this period. The Baroque period, if you're interested. And it wasn't a strong enough resemblance.
Separate apartments on opposing sides of the building complex were constructed with the aim of showing the equivalent power of William and Mary. When Mary died, the renovations lost steam and William lost interest. He later died in a riding accident at the park in the grounds of Hampton Court Palace. He fell off his horse.
Wow.
Queen Anne, Mary's sister and successor, completed renovations on the state apartments, but also sadly completed the Stuart dynasty, dying childless in 1714.
George I and George II of the Hanoverian dynasty took over from Anne. They were the last monarchs to reside at Hampton Court Palace. They continued refurbishment, adding the Queen's Staircase in 1733 and the Cumberland Suite in 1737, named after the Duke of Cumberland, a figure best known for his part in quashing the Jacobite uprising in Scotland and the Battle of Culloden Moor.
Interestingly, George III never refused to step foot in Hampton Court in his adult life, and refused to use it as a royal residence because of a story where his father, George II, struck him in public in there and he was too embarrassed to ever return.
Well,
yeah.
But George III was a little bit... I don't know if there's much you could take serious from him in adulthood.
Not massively. There is a reason he was called Mad King George.
He went a little bit mad.
Just a little bit. Sad. Very, very sad.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, the palace today. That's basically how it's changed history, how it's changed hands. And
There's
how
not that much
happened
happened in Hampton Court Palace.
Not really.
No,
Not
it's
really.
known for the sadness.
Yeah. There's a lot of people died, changed hands, didn't care. But from that and all the renovations that have been done, not a lot of the original Tudor bit remains, apart from the gatehouses and the Great Hall.
And the clock.
Yeah. And a little bit of the chapel as well.
So it's still, a lot of that palace is still older than America.
Yeah, it makes me laugh when you watch an American show. I'm like, oh my god, this place is so old. It's from like 1750.
Yeah, when we watch ghost shows, and they're like, oh my god, we might have a ghost here from the 1800s. And we're like, mate, we don't even go to a ghost hunter for 1800s. What's the point?
We have pubs where there's cellars that have Roman ghosts walking through, and we're like, you know what? Come back when you've got a Roman.
Come to England. Come over here. We old.
We will show you history, my dear.
But yeah, the palace today, it is open to the public and is home to many pieces of art from the royal collection, including works of art from the Tudor and Renaissance and the Stuart periods. This isn't just limited to paintings, there are also sculptures, ceramics and furniture.
A lot of the 17th and 18th century furniture remains, and the throne canopy in the King's Privy Chamber is still in situ from when it was last used.
The timber and plaster ceiling of the chapel, like you said, is an original Tudor feature, probably the only one that remains in the chapel actually, Wren having redesigned the rest.
Either he just really, really liked the ceiling or he couldn't reach the ceiling.
I'd say liked it. We'll go with liked it.
Yeah. Just the idea of Christopher Wren going, damn it, I do not have my stepladder. None of the original Tudor grounds remain. Visitors would instead walk through a late 17th century layout. There is even a maze surviving and maintained from the Stuart era, having been designed specifically for William III.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
A line of statues of heraldic animals known as the King's Beasts line the bridge that leads over the moat into the palace proper, which represent the ancestry of Henry VIII and Jane Seymour.
In 2009, in honour of the 500th anniversary of the succession of Henry VIII, a Tudor garden was created in the chapel court with smaller wooden versions of the King's Beasts, and they actually got art historians in to consult on that to create proper versions of them and ensure that they were painted with authentic Tudor colours.
I just love that.
The attention to detail is amazing.
I just love that. The palace was restored and opened to the public officially in 1838 by Queen Victoria. Though the restoration was done at the time wasn't the best, but they tried.
It has been termed as heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So I think they probably just, tried it a bit too hard. It's in September 1952, the palace was Grade 1 listed, which is a listing system we've got in the UK for protection of buildings. It's Grade 1 and Grade 2. Grade 1 gives it protection and means that only qualified restoration, conservation and maintenance is allowed to be carried out in keeping with the existing styles. Things like bricks have to be replaced only by artisan handmade bricks. It keeps the palace looking as it has for centuries, but it also ensures that the skills that went into creating such a beautiful building don't die out.
Shit like that is good. That's why we've still got old places in England.
Yeah, that's why we've still got like thatched roofs and handmade bricks and
I want a
door.
thatched roof cottage.
You do not want the insurance that comes with it.
I want to live like Snow White. Not with the 7 dudes. I can barely deal with one.
He was short though.
Fact. Interesting fact, however, the first performances of Hamlet and Macbeth by William Shakespeare were done here by his acting troupe, the King's Men, for James I in 1603.
Indeed. Macbeth was actually specifically written for James I because it was about a Scotsman becoming king. The most recent addition to Hampton Court was the Magic Garden, a Tudor-inspired installation which was opened in 2016 by the Duchess of Cambridge.
I remember her doing that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And as well as playing host to film and TV crews, the palace also holds the RHS Flower Show and the Hampton Court Music Festival, as well as other outdoor concerts and temporary art installations.
Yeah, so it's not just a pretty building you can go and look around.
Yeah.
It's also an active, there's things still going on there, which is pretty cool.
I think it's good that they've kept it looking as it did, like Tudor Stuart times.
Yeah.
But they use it for modern means. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And not just leaving it there, it's serving a purpose.
It's the past and the present. And I wonder how the spirits would feel with some of the more modern concerts and art installations.
We sat there and what is this? This is not music. I'd be like, it's so loud.
I'm just picturing from BBC Ghost, just Mary going, "I don't likes it.
Don't likes it."
Right. Well, speaking of spirits, it wouldn't be us if we didn't talk about the darker side of Hampton Court. And by that we mean the ghosties. Ooh.
As Carrie mentioned previously, it is believed that Catherine Howard haunts the haunted gallery, screaming as she relives her attempt to escape. But she isn't the only queen. Poor Jane Seymour is also believed to haunt the palace, where she sadly succumbed to the rigours of childbirth. She manifests as a sad woman in white, carrying a candle up the silver stick stairs, which coincidentally led to the very room where she took her last breath. She is seen every year on the anniversary of Edward's birth in October.
So if you ever want to see the ghost of a queen, just go and hang out by the Silver Stick Stairs in October. The Grey Lady, or Sybil Penn, has been seen a number of times around the palace. She was a servant to 4 of the 5 Tudor monarchs and was even a wet nurse to Edward VI.
Wow.
She nursed Elizabeth I through smallpox in 1562, but though Elizabeth survived, admittedly scarred, Sybil too caught the disease and she died shortly afterwards. She was buried in the nearby Hampton Church, which was proper for a servant of the royal family. Her spirit awoke when her body was disturbed during renovations to the church in 1829, and she has been seen since haunting the state apartments and Clock Court.
That's fun.
But that makes sense because the state apartments and Clock Court were original.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where she knows.
Yep. In one of the Grace and Favour apartments, strange noises came from behind one of the walls, like those of an old wooden spinning wheel being used. When the wall was finally removed for renovation work, legend had it that it had an old spinning wheel was found.
That is sometimes attributed to Sybil Pent, the Grey Lady, as well, that she was using the spinning wheel.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the fact they found it, but they heard it first.
Yeah. In the 1870s, an elderly resident in the Grace and Favour apartments of the palace complained regularly of knocks.
Thought I put my phone on silent. I apologise. 1 moment, please.
Honestly, you can't get the staff these days.
I apologise. It was Tobias from the Manic Podcast saying thank you for me wishing him a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Tobias.
Yep, happy birthday, but I've already said it to you because that was you replying to it. Apologies.
So, in the 1870s, an elderly resident in the Grace and Favour apartments of the palace complained regularly of knocks and banging on her walls throughout the night, keeping her awake. Nobody believed her, but in 1871, a pair of shallow graves were discovered nearby in a cloister. The bodies were properly interred, and suddenly the woman's nightly visits ceased.
Yeah.
It's believed that they were victims of parliamentarian nefariousness.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm surprised I got that out in one go, to be honest.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, basically when Cromwell and his cronies took over, two cavaliers, two royalists, fell foul of the parliamentarians, and they decided to stick them in shallow graves in the cloister. So they're just knocking on this woman's wall like, let us out, bury us, please.
Yeah, probably a bit chilly.
Yeah, probs.
So if you head over to YouTube and search for Hampton Court Ghost, you'll see one that came to public attention in 2003.
Yeah, I actually remember this. When I used to get the bus into school, there was a free newspaper you could get on the bus called the Metro, in Birmingham, and I remember this being front page news and seeing the picture and going, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yep. Alarms kept going off and fire doors were found opened mysteriously. Security staff checked the CCTV footage to try and catch which pesky staff member was doing this. They obviously thought like someone was trying to, make it seem as if
it's a hot
spooky.
summer, someone's opening the doors,
Yeah.
Who is it?
Only to see the doors being opened by somebody in what can only be described as full Stuart garb. Some say it was a hoax, but to this day, nobody has come forward to claim that it was their prank. Watch the video for yourself and see what you think, and let us know.
It's a very strange video. It's like a couple of seconds, that's all it is. But you see the fire door open, and there's someone, it's like, they are definitely not dressed from this century.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they do reenactments or anything in costume there, but if it was someone in costume, you'd have thought by now, like 2003, 2022, it's nearly 20 years on, you'd think that someone would come forward and say, you know what, guys, it was me, sorry.
My bad.
But nobody has.
Nope.
So, that's it for our tour of Hampton Court Palace. It's somewhere we are both very keen to visit, and maybe one day when we do, we might do an on-site episode from there.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, we did it with Castle Rising.
Yep.
We're rising to the occasion.
I never get over the puns we use for every one of our episodes.
I've got to think of one for this. That's going to be tricky.
We'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. You're the good one with the words.
We'll get there. We'll do it. We would encourage anyone who can to visit the palace, just to experience the history and the opulence for yourself.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice place to go, and obviously when you visit it, your donations help pay towards the conservation of it as well.
Even better then.
Yeah.
Even better.
And it has a tea room.
Get cake.
Cake.
That's what we used to have cake and sandwiches. Way before we were a nice cup of history, we were called TARBIS History, which stood for...
I can't remember. Timely and relevant blogging, including sandwiches.
Yes, that's it.
Sandwiches.
Because before we were a podcast, we were a blog. We do still have that blog somewhere.
We do still have it. We just maybe need to write it.
Yeah, but we started as a blog, and the idea was to go to different historical sites, blog about them, and also rate their tea room, their sandwiches and their cakes.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important thing to know. But
yeah.
We then started the podcast, and then COVID hit. So
right?
Yeah, life got in the way.
Yeah, because I'm not so good with the whole writing as you are. It's easier for me to talk.
That's fair.
So doing a podcast for me is easier.
Em,
Yes.
I believe that you have a random fact about Hampton Court Palace and the filming of a particular scene from a particular TV sketch show to which we are both rather partial.
Yes. You may have heard us talk about horrible histories. We do sometimes talk about it, and we do like it quite a lot, and the guys who are in it. And one of the famous, I think it actually might be the #1 horrible history song. So I think on YouTube there's loads of like ratings and stuff.
I think it is the most famous one, yeah.
And it's the King of Bling, Charles II song.
Yeah.
With Matt Bainton as the King of Bling. And if you watch the video of the song, you will see that he spends a lot of time walking up and down a table on the table.
Yeah.
It turns out that table is actually an historic Tudor table that they were told not to use and under no circumstances to climb upon. But he just climbed upon it.
Yeah.
And just did it anyway.
And it's an epic scene because you've got all like it's laid out for a banquet and he just gets up and starts walking down
rapping
it whilst rapping
table.
dressed as Charles II, and you're like, okay, this is different. But yeah, when
shouldn't have done that.
When you told me he wasn't allowed to, I was like, oh man.
I was like, yeah, it was one of those. I think came across it on YouTube, and he said like I shouldn't have done that. We got in trouble, but I just thought I was in Hampton Court Palace dressed as a king.
I can just imagine the staff's like jaw dropping all simultaneously.
When he's just walking
what
on
is
a
he
table.
doing?
But yeah, so if you watch him do it in the video, the King of Bling, he's being naughty.
He went method. He went full Charles II. It's like, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
This my pad. I don't care.
Fact.
So, that's it. That's Hampton Court Palace.
Yay.
Nice quick one, but it gets us back into the swing of things.
Ridiculous death! This is our little segment that we end every one of our podcasts with. Unless it's like a podcast where ridiculous death would be
inappropriate.
Yeah.
Then we do a ridiculous survival.
Yeah. But anyway, for this, we do ridiculous death where someone has hilariously and ironically taken themselves out of the gene pool.
In keeping with the idea of like opulence and expensiveness and greed and glitter
and 1500s,
we've gone over to France and to a sort of spin-off member of the French royal family.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of. This is Daphne de Poitiers, or Daphne de Poitiers, who was the mistress of Henry II. Who, just to tie it in with the royal family, his son Francis was the first husband of Mary Queen of Scots. But she was not his mother, someone else was.
Yeah.
But Daphne was used to the court life. She was a favourite mistress. She was quite popular, quite powerful, and she had the best of the best.
Yeah.
That included food and drink and hair decorations that would be covered in gold leaf.
Yes.
She would ingest this gold leaf. She would wear this gold leaf. It would cover her skin. Have you ever heard of heavy metal poisoning?
Well, yeah.
Basically, she became ill after falling from a horse, and she became ill from that, and she never really recovered. But the reason she never really recovered was discovered much later, when her remains were excavated in 2009, and they found high levels of gold in her hair. For something to be in your hair, it has to go through your bloodstream.
Yeah.
So basically, she regularly drank gold in order to preserve her youth, preserve her beauty, because she could afford it, and it killed her. So in the pursuit of beauty and youth, she poisoned herself to death.
I mean, people are stupid.
Yeah.
It's the same as that king who tried to make himself better by drinking mercury.
Oh yeah, the Chin Emperor who...
Yeah, we've done him, but he's been a ridiculous death member that we've had.
Yeah, so maybe think twice before you drink that elixir of life or elixir of youth or something.
Yeah, and don't drink gold. I mean, I know you've got Goldschlager and some gins that have a little bit of gold leaf in to look fancy, but that's okay. That's a little bit. Do not drink full gold.
Yes.
It's stupid.
Do not drink wine laced with gold. Do not bathe in water laced with gold. Do not eat food laced with gold. Do not have gold like 3 times a day with your meal.
Yeah, we're saying like have the old, if you're feeling fancy, you want a little bit of gold leaf on your birthday cake, you know, to look fancy, that's fine. It's just the all day, everyday aspects of it.
Yes. Or you'll go the way of dear de Poitiers and
But if you want to show that you were rich when you died, you die of gold.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would be intrigued. I mean, obviously, I doubt you'd actually see it in her hair. It'd have to be right down to her follicles. But imagine if, like, you died and then someone dug you up and you had, like, shiny hair.
but the fact that it was still in her hair.
Yeah. Well, it's got a really low, really long half-life, so it degrades after a long period of time. So, yeah.
Crazy.
Lots and lots of gold. Don't do it.
Don't do it, kids.
All that
Stay
glitters may be a dead person.
Joys. Right, so as Carrie said at the beginning, we're going to go off and record another one that you'll be listening to in a month's time from now.
I don't know why I made a pigeon noise.
I don't know. Hopefully by then we will have gotten back into the swing of things, because we do have a list of ones that we're going to do. And hopefully we shall be back. Regular scheduled programming.
Yes, the content that you know and love. And if you want to give us a suggestion for what we might want to cover, then by all means do so through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handles are always at Cup of History.
Nice and easy. Or email us.
Yeah, which is cupofhistory@outlook.com.
Until then, bye.
Bye.